And another cool thing about using these smart objects and the camera raw filter, even though I made, I don't know, a half a dozen different changes, different adjustments, all you have to do is hit Command Z out here on the front end, and that undoes that last adjustment. All right, let's head back to our document, and probably a good idea to save this. So we got our file saved, and where are we at? I need to go into Documents, and what was this? Smart Objects. Hard to remember where we were this morning. I'm going to click on Here the Art AI. Photoshop thinks it's an Illustrator file. It's not. Click on Photoshop and it turns right back. If you do the same thing to an Illustrator document and click on a PSD, Illustrator's smart enough to know, yeah, okay, I'll take the title, but not the extension. I'm an Illustrator file. So those of you who think Photoshop rocks, hey, you're right, but it might not be as smart as Illustrator. So there we go. So this PSD is saved, and we have our little smart objects that came straight out of Illustrator. Now, on the bottom one, let's go ahead and go up to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and it is right here. And your shortcut, I think, is just Shift-Command-A. I think that's it. I add Option to this, and I'll explain why later on when we set our shortcuts. Probably in a month or so, I'm going to have you do a bunch of custom shortcuts and explain why it's a good idea. Now, I'm waiting for something to load. All it is a solid gray color. Now, I added texture. Click on the effects, the FX right here. Click on this, and I added quite a bit of grain to this background image. And you can change the size, change the roughness, give it personality, and remember, whatever you do here, you can undo later. You can change this. And then I added a little bit of vignetting. You know, don't go crazy. This is hideous. That's not good. Okay? You want a vignette to be there, but not be really in your face. And remember, we can always adjust this later. That's the cool thing. So come back here to the Basic tab. And remember how I told you about auto? I don't think this is going to work, but I'll click on it. No, back to default. And I want to pump up the clarity a little bit. There is a lot of texture in this. Clarity highlights the difference between light and dark, between boundaries. And you see it really pumped up that vignette. So we just head back here to the FX, to the effects, and back that vignette off a little bit. Come back to the Basic tab, maybe pump up dehaze a little bit, darken this up, pump up the blacks, maybe the shadows, a little bit more white will give it some more contrast. And speaking of contrast, we can come right here. And sometimes if you don't know what these do, it's a good idea to just see how that cursor changes to that double-headed arrow right there. What you can do is pull it all the way one way, all the way the other way, and then you see the extremes, and you can pick something that kind of works for you. Okay? Now, I'm not going to go crazy, and we can change exposure. Maybe just darken this up just a touch. And I'm going to click OK. We can come back. All you have to do to continue to edit this is double-click on Camera Raw, and you're back in the Camera Raw filter, and you can make whatever adjustments you like. Pump up those highlights a little. Say OK. All right, so we come up to the Vector Smart Object, and we go back to Camera Raw. Filter, Camera Raw. And the most recently used filter is always right here. And the shortcut for the most recently used filter, see that little up arrow? That's Control, actually. Control Command F. PC users, how about that? So if I hit Control Command F, I get taken to Camera Raw with the squares. And now what I did is I said, my thinking was, okay, I added a lot of texture to the background. I'm going to add less texture to these squares, but I still want this grain there. Not texture, grain. And then, you know, I didn't play with the size or the roughness. But it doesn't matter. You can. This is always, 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 always re-editable, right? And adding a vignette makes no sense whatsoever because it won't add a vignette to every single square. It'll do this to the whole thing. So I didn't even touch that. come back here, maybe pump clarity up a little bit, dehaze up, and, just a couple other things. I'm going to click OK. And then we look at this, and there's not a lot of contrast between these two. So maybe this needs to be just a touch darker. So we can come here, double click on Camera Raw, and to make it darker, we can pump up the blacks a little bit and the shadows. Click OK, and see, we've suddenly created more contrast. And now with our color, this is really different. And we'll talk a lot more about color. But again, I'm going to hold down that shortcut key. What was it? Well, I don't know. So I'm going to use my shortcut and bring it up. What was it? Control, Command. I never use this because I know my shortcuts. Anyway, I want to show you something here with the color. You know how Illustrator had the global colors and you could make those corrections right there? Well, the cool thing about Photoshop is we can do that too. First, I want to add less texture or less grain than we had before, but a little bit just to make it blend in with the rest. Okay, and again, the vignette's not going to work at all. Come back here and we'll pump up clarity a little bit. We'll just play with this and contrast. And then I want to show you this fourth tab, the HSL adjustments. Hue, saturation, okay, well, regardless of what it stands for, see, hue, saturation, luminance. So here we can actually change the hue. See the red change? Crazy, huh? Command Z. But I'm not going to mess with that here. Saturation, you got to be really careful with this, but doesn't the red look a little hot? So you just take that saturation down a little bit. Maybe go to the luminance channel, and this makes it brighter or darker. So we can make that red a little brighter, but not, what did it look like before? Hit the letter P. Let go of P, P, okay? So you can kind of see, take that orange, maybe make it a little more luminant. And the green, awfully bright. What if we darken this up just a touch? Maybe go to saturation, pull that green down a little bit. And same thing with those blues. I kind of like that saturation. Go to the luminance, pump that up. Not quite that much. Just play with it just a little. You're always treating this by eye. We'll click OK. And now, these are improvements. And we keep going back. Go ahead, dance back and forth with these, trying to get the best balance. Spend some time. Enjoy yourself. Do some experimenting. Don't go too crazy. You can always go too far. Knowing how to season to taste is an art that takes time. Take some time.